I used to believe that family was the one place in the world where love never changed, where loyalty didn't bend, where people didn't switch sides just because life got harder. I carried that belief like a shield until the year everything around me cracked slowly, painfully, one piece at a time. I grew up in a house where my mother always said, "I'll protect you from anything." She used to tuck my hair behind my ear and tell me I was the strongest thing she had ever created. Back then, I believed her so completely that the idea of losing her trust, or her love, felt impossible. When I look back now, I realize that sometimes betrayal doesn't show up like a storm. Sometimes it grows quietly, like a shadow stretching across the room until you suddenly realize the light is gone. It all started the summer she met Marcus. He wasn't a bad man at first. At least that's what I kept telling myself. He had an easy smile, expensive cologne, and the kind of confidence that filled a room. My mother transformed around him, suddenly wearing brighter lipstick, cooking bigger meals, humming in the kitchen the way she used to when I was little. I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. But every time Marcus looked at me, it was like he was measuring me, deciding how much space I deserved to take up. At first, he played nice, brought home small gifts, called me kiddo, asked about school. But after a few months, the tone shifted. Every question became a criticism. Every comment came with a sting buried beneath it. If I spoke up, he'd raise an eyebrow like my words weren't worth the effort of listening. And slowly, my mother changed with him. She started spending more time in their room with the door closed. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny, especially when they were about me. She stopped noticing when I came home quiet, or when I stopped coming home at all until it was dark. Her attention, her warmth, her softness, they were all being poured into this man who saw me as nothing more than an inconvenience. One night I overheard them talking in the kitchen. I was supposed to be asleep, but their voices carried through the walls. Marcus said, "She's getting in the way." My mother whispered, "She's just adjusting. She'll grow out of it." He laughed, low and sharp. "She'd better." I stood there in the hallway, numb, letting their voices wash over me like cold water. What shocked me was what Marcus said. It was that my mother didn't defend me, not once. She didn't say, "Don't talk about my daughter like that." She didn't say, "She's just a kid." She said nothing for me. That silence changed everything. After that night, the house felt different, colder, tighter, like the walls were slowly pushing me out. Marcus controlled the TV, the thermostat, the food in the fridge. And with each small territory he claimed, my mother stepped back like she was afraid to interrupt him. When I tried to talk to her, she would say, "He's trying, sweetheart. You have to try too." I wanted to scream that I had been trying long before Marcus ever showed up. I tried to be invisible, to stay out of trouble, to swallow my feelings so she wouldn't have one more thing to worry about. But the less space I took up, the more Marcus took. The breaking point came the night before my school's art competition. I had worked for months on a painting, a portrait of my mother, the way she looked before life hardened her eyes. It was the most important piece I had ever created. She promised she'd drive me early the next morning. She said she was proud of me. But that evening, Marcus walked in holding 2 fishing rods and a 6-pack of beer, announcing he and my mother were going on an early morning trip. I reminded her about my competition, about her promise. She looked between us, me holding my painting, him holding the rods. Then she sighed and said softly, "Maybe you can go next year." I didn't shout. I just nodded and walked back to my room, placed the painting on the floor, and cried silently into my pillow. My mother didn't knock on my door. Not then, not later, not in the morning. When I woke up, they were gone. I found the painting later that day in the garage, shoved behind the trash bin, bent and stained. When I confronted Marcus, he didn't deny it. He looked right at me and said, "That thing was cluttering the kitchen." My mother came home hours later. I showed her the ruined painting. Her face flickered, guilt, discomfort, shame, but she pushed it down and whispered, "Maybe it was an accident." That was when something inside me hardened. I didn't stop loving her, but I stopped believing she was on my side. I moved out the day I turned 18. I packed my clothes in quiet, folding each shirt carefully because it felt like the only thing I still had control over. When I stood at the doorway with my bags, my mother looked devastated. She said, "You're abandoning me." Not, "I'm sorry." not "let's fix this." She made herself the victim in a story where I had been breaking for years. I looked at her one last time and said, "You let us fall apart long before I ever walked out." Then I left. Life after that wasn't easy. I worked 2 jobs, lived in a tiny apartment where I could hear my neighbors argue through the walls. But it was peaceful. No silent hostility, no walking on eggshells, no pretending. 5 years passed before my mother reached out. She called late one night, voice trembling. Marcus had left her. Took everything, her savings, her car, her dignity. Everything she ever sacrificed me to protect. She asked if I could come. A part of me wanted to ignore her call. But another part, the child who remembered the bedtime songs, the warm hands on sick days, couldn't leave her alone in that moment. When I reached her house, she opened the door slowly. She looked older, smaller, like life had finally caught up to her. She didn't try to defend what she did. She didn't try to blame Marcus. She just whispered, "I should have protected you. I should have chosen you. I'm so sorry." Hearing that broke something open inside me. Not anger. Not relief. Just release. I didn't move back in. I didn't pretend the past was erased. But I visited her, slowly, carefully, letting each conversation become a small brick in a bridge we were rebuilding. Forgiving her wasn't easy. It didn't happen in a moment. It happened in pieces, like stitching together a torn photograph until the image resembled something whole again. And I realized something important along the way. You can love someone and still walk away. You can be hurt and still heal. You can forgive without forgetting. You can protect yourself without becoming cold. Family can break your heart in ways no one else can. But family can also be rebuilt, not from the past you lost, but from the courage it takes to choose yourself first.